Princess Seralith stood at the highest balcony of the Estelian palace, watching the twin suns sink below the horizon. Their light painted the sky in shades of gold and violet, but she felt none of the warmth. The colors were beautiful, but she had seen them 1,000 times, and beauty did little to ease the weight on her heart. Every day felt the same, a quiet reminder that she was not wanted by her own people. The palace behind her was a place of elegance and perfection. Tall white pillars twisted like vines, glowing with soft inner light. Floating lanterns drifted in the halls, carrying faint music. Servants moved silently like shadows. Everything looked peaceful and graceful, yet Seralith felt trapped inside it, like a fragile ornament, placed on a shelf and forgotten. She had been born into a royal bloodline, admired across galaxies. Estelians lived long, their forms tall and luminous, their minds gifted with memory and diplomacy. For thousands of years, their empire survived by creating alliances through marriage. Every princess was expected to extend the line, to bring new heirs and strengthen ties with powerful species. But Seralith was different. Doctors discovered her infertility when she was still young. News spread quickly, and the whispers began long before she understood what they meant. By the time she reached adulthood, the whispers had grown sharper. They followed her in every corridor. She could hear them, even when she pretended not to. The princess cannot continue the royal line. She is a jewel with a flaw. She will bring no heirs, no alliances, no future. Some nobles were polite to her face, but others simply avoided her. When officials spoke of royal duties, they spoke around her, not to her. She became a symbol of disappointment, one no one wanted to acknowledge openly. The emperor, her father, did not mistreat her, but he often looked at her with the eyes of a man searching for answers he could not find. It was not cruelty that kept Seralith isolated. It was tradition. Estelian rulers believed lineage was sacred, almost holy. Without it, a princess held no importance. She tried to focus on her studies. She learned languages, diplomacy, philosophy, and the history of alliances. She became skilled in resolving conflicts, often solving problems other nobles argued about for days. Yet every success felt hollow, because none of it changed how others saw her. One evening, after finishing a diplomatic report, she overheard 2 senators speaking in the council chamber. "The political situation is collapsing," one said. "The void-born dominion grows stronger every cycle. We need stronger alliances. We need stronger alliances. We cannot offer the infertile princess," the other whispered. "No empire will accept such a marriage. It would be seen as an insult." Seralith turned away before they noticed her. She walked through the halls, her steps soft but steady. She was used to hearing her name in sentences like these, but the fear in their voices was new. Something was shifting, something dangerous. That night, she joined a small meeting with the emperor, the empress, and several high advisors. She stood behind them as they argued about growing threats. The void-born dominion, an aggressive coalition that destroyed entire civilizations, was expanding again. Their fleets were stronger, their attacks quicker, and the Estelian Empire was no longer sure it could face them alone. When one advisor suggested offering a royal marriage to the neighboring Solarian kingdom, another immediately refused. "They want heirs. They will never accept the princess." Then perhaps the Zyran clans? They already declined. And the Irandal hive? They said they would consider it before they discovered the princess's condition. The room fell silent. The emperor looked tired. His silver eyes closed briefly, and his voice was low when he spoke. "We cannot keep hiding behind pride. If our empire falls, what will lineage matter? We need allies who look beyond old traditions. We must search outside usual boundaries, even among humans." A ripple of shock passed through the room. Humans were known for being bold, unpredictable, and strange compared to elegant Estelian customs. They were newcomers to galactic politics, but had earned respect for their fierce defense of their own worlds. Serelith kept her face calm, though inside her thoughts whirled. Was her father truly considering asking humans to accept her hand? It was unthinkable. The nobles would see it as lowering royal dignity. Humans valued individuality, not royal blood. They might not care about her infertility, but they might also reject the marriage entirely. Her mother finally asked, "Will any human even accept such a request?" The emperor did not answer immediately. He only said, "We will ask, if even humans refuse." Serelith felt a quiet ache in her chest. She wished she could help in some real way. She wished she were not the subject of these discussions, but someone who could offer true aid to her people. Yet she understood the cruelty of politics. Her marriage had become a desperate bargaining piece, one no one wanted, but everyone needed. That night, she returned to her chambers. The rooms were spacious and decorated with shimmering curtains, soft light pools, and ancient symbols carved into the walls. Everything looked perfect. But she felt alone. She sat at her desk and touched the glowing crystal that activated her personal records. Faces of alien ambassadors she had worked with appeared in the air. She scrolled through them slowly, remembering each successful negotiation. She had brought peace to border colonies, solved disputes between rival species, and convinced traders to lower unfair tariffs. She had value, she knew that. But she did not know how to prove it to her own people. While she was lost in thought, her door chimed softly. A palace messenger entered, bowing deeply. "Princess Serelith," he said. "A reply has come from the Terran Federation." Her breath caught for a moment. "Already?" "Yes, Princess. The Federation is reviewing the proposal, and one human soldier has expressed interest." She blinked, surprised. "A soldier?" "Yes, Captain Rowan Hale." She did not know the name, but the idea of a soldier, rather than a politician or a noble, was unexpected. Soldiers were direct, courageous, and unafraid of danger. But would such a person truly volunteer for a marriage like this? She dismissed the messenger and walked back to the balcony. The twin moons were rising now, covering the land in silver. Somewhere far across the galaxy, a human soldier had seen her file, her history, her flaws, everything, and still stepped forward. For the first time in many years, Serelith felt a small spark of curiosity, a tiny warmth. She did not know who Rowan Hale was, but she wondered what kind of human would choose a princess the rest of the galaxy ignored. Maybe something was about to change. Rowan Hale had never imagined that his name would one day appear in a royal marriage proposal from another species. He was a soldier, not a diplomat, and definitely not someone who expected to be considered for something so strange and political. Yet when the Terran Federation forwarded the Estelian Emperor's request to high-ranking officers, Rowan found himself reading the document 3 times. The proposal was clear. The Estelian Empire wanted a marriage alliance with a human. Not for romance, not for tradition, but because their survival depended on it. The Voidborn Dominion was closing in on Estelian borders, and the Empire needed allies fast. But the most striking part of the proposal was not the political desperation. It was the profile of Princess Serelith. Rowan sat alone in the quiet briefing room, a small screen glowing before him. Her image floated in the air, tall, elegant, with soft, luminous features and calm eyes that seemed to carry years of quiet sadness. He read her file carefully. She was intelligent, skilled in diplomacy, patient, and known for kindness. But all of this was overshadowed by a single word stamped repeatedly throughout the report. Infertile. He leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. It didn't make sense. How could an entire empire overlook everything she had accomplished because of one biological detail? He shook his head. It reminded him too much of things he had seen on Earth long ago, when some people were judged for things beyond their control. Rowan's past was filled with battles, but not all of them were physical. He had fought for people who were cast aside, for civilians trapped behind enemy lines, for soldiers who lost limbs or families. He had seen cruelty disguised as tradition many times before. Maybe that was why the princess's file affected him more than he expected. The message at the end of the proposal repeated the same question: will any human accept this union? It felt less like a question and more like a silent plea. Rowan did not answer immediately. He spent the rest of the evening thinking. He walked around the base, passing groups of soldiers laughing near the training yard, talking loudly in the cafeteria, sparring in open fields. Life on the human military base was messy and loud, full of emotions, arguments, friendships, and energy. It was nothing like the calm, polished world in the princess's recordings. He wondered what she would think of humans. He wondered what she thought when she learned that a soldier had shown interest. Before dawn, he submitted his answer. His commanding officer, General Everson, called him in with disbelief on his face. "Rowan, are you serious? You volunteered? For a political marriage with an alien princess you've never met?" Rowan nodded. "Yes, sir." "Why?" the general asked. "You could refuse. Everyone else did." Rowan hesitated for a moment. He didn't want to sound emotional or dramatic, but his answer was simple. Because she deserves at least one person who sees her as more than a problem, and because this alliance could save lives on both sides. General Everson stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." He paused, then added quietly, "But maybe you're exactly what they need." The agreement was processed quickly. Humans were known for making fast decisions, and the Estelians were desperate. Rowan found himself preparing for a diplomatic journey, something he had never trained for. Soldiers saluted him with mixed expressions: amusement, curiosity, pity, admiration. A few joked loudly. "Captain, bring us back some fancy alien food." Others whispered, "Why him? Why would he agree?" Rowan ignored all of it. He packed a small bag with only essentials. He didn't know what married life with an alien would look like. He didn't even know if Sarilith wanted this marriage. He only knew he was walking into a situation where he would be judged by an entire empire before he even spoke. When his shuttle launched from Earth and joined a larger diplomatic vessel, Rowan looked out the window at the shrinking blue planet. He had fought for Earth many times, but now he was leaving it for something entirely different. Something uncertain. Something important. The journey through hyperspace lasted several days. During that time, Rowan studied everything he could about Astelian culture. Their formal greetings, their social etiquette, their traditions. He practiced the respectful bow required when meeting royalty. He learned the history of their alliances, their rituals, their art. The more he learned, the more he understood how delicate the situation was. The Estelians valued perfection, perfect speech, perfect posture, perfect bloodlines. Rowan was not perfect. He knew he would stand out the moment he stepped off the ship. He was shorter than an Estelian, less graceful, more direct, and he carried the roughness of a soldier who had seen too much. But he also knew one thing. He would meet Sarilith with honesty. No pretending. No hidden motives. When the ship arrived near the Estelian capital, Rowan saw the planet through the viewport. It glimmered with silver-blue oceans and glowing cities shaped like spirals. The sky shimmered with floating structures and graceful ships moving in synchronized patterns. It looked like a world designed for peace, not war. He felt a nervous pulse in his chest, but steadied himself. Soldiers were trained to walk into danger without hesitation. This was different, but the fear felt oddly familiar. As the shuttle descended, dozens of Astelian officials gathered on the landing platform. Their robes flowed like liquid light. Their faces were unreadable. They bowed politely but examined Rowan with curious, cautious eyes. He felt like he was being measured and weighed, as if they were trying to decide whether he was worthy or merely inconvenient. A tall advisor approached him. "Captain Rowan Hale, of the Terran Federation?" Rowan bowed as instructed. "Yes. Welcome to Astelia. The Emperor and Princess await your arrival." They guided him through shimmering corridors lined with glowing symbols. Every Astelian he passed looked at him with surprise. Some with hope, others with doubt. Rowan kept his posture steady, but he noticed the silence in their steps, the careful distance they kept. Finally, the doors to a grand hall opened. At the far end stood the Emperor, dignified and calm. Beside him was Princess Seralith. Rowan felt a strange tightening in his chest when he saw her in person. Her presence was gentle yet strong. Her luminous eyes met his, and for a moment the world felt quiet. Seralith watched him carefully. She expected a noble. She expected a diplomat. Instead, she saw a human soldier with simple clothing, honest eyes, and a steady expression. She didn't know what she expected him to feel, but she did not see hesitation in him. Rowan bowed deeply. "Princess Seralith, it is an honor to meet you." She studied him, then offered a soft nod. Her voice was calm, almost surprised. "Captain Rowan Hale, thank you for coming." In that brief moment, something shifted. Rowan didn't see an infertile princess. He saw someone who had been treated like an empty place in a puzzle she could never fit. Someone who deserved more than silence and pity. And Seralith didn't see a reckless human soldier. She saw someone who volunteered when millions would have walked away. For both of them, the meeting felt unexpected, strange, uncertain, but not unpleasant. It felt like the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet. Something new. Something important. Something that would change not just their lives, but the fate of two empires. The Astelian palace had always been quiet, but ever since Captain Rowan Hale arrived, the silence felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were waiting to see what would happen. His presence was something new, something the nobles did not know how to understand. He was not graceful like them. He was not polished or trained in royal etiquette from birth. Yet he walked with confidence, spoke with honesty, and listened with respect. And for the first time, Princess Seralith found herself curious about someone in a way she had never expected. Their days were filled with official meetings and long discussions. The Astelian Emperor wanted Rowan to understand the political situation, and Rowan wanted Seralith to understand the human side of the alliance. They spent hours sitting across from each other in bright rooms filled with floating screens and glowing maps. Sometimes they disagreed. Sometimes they found surprising similarities. But every conversation made them more comfortable in each other's presence. At first, Seralith kept her expression calm and formal. She was used to hiding her feelings behind polite smiles. She had spent a lifetime pretending she wasn't bothered by the quiet pity people carried in their eyes. But Rowan didn't look at her like that. When he spoke to her, he didn't treat her like a fragile ornament or a political tool. He treated her like a person with her own thoughts, her own worries, and her own strength. One afternoon, after a long meeting with advisors, Seralith asked if he wanted to walk through the palace gardens. It was unusual for her to invite someone like that. Rowan accepted immediately, though he noticed the surprised look on the faces of the servants. The gardens were unlike anything Rowan had ever seen. Silver trees grew beside pools of crystal water, and glowing plants bent gently toward them as they passed. Small winged creatures flew overhead, leaving trails of light in their wake. Seralith walked slowly, her hands folded neatly, her voice soft as she explained the names of plants and the symbols carved into the stones. Rowan listened carefully. He asked questions that made her smile in a small, shy way, as if she wasn't used to someone actually wanting to know more about her world. At one point, she paused beside a tall white tree with leaves shaped like stars. "This was planted on the day I was born," she said. "Astelian families plant a tree to represent their child's future. It grows with them. Rowan looked at the tree, then at her. It's beautiful, like it was meant to shine. Sarilith lowered her gaze. Some people say it grew too quickly, that it tried to become impressive to hide the truth. 17 Rive, 17:1. What truth? Rowan asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. That its princess is not enough. Rowan stopped walking. He turned toward her, his tone steady. Sarilith, you should never think that. She did not look up. She had heard empty reassurance before. But Rowan did not speak with empty politeness. He continued. You are more capable than half the people I've met in positions of power. You read situations faster than most diplomats. You handle everything calmly, even when people don't treat you fairly. That's not enough. That's someone strong. Sarilith slowly lifted her eyes and studied his face. His expression was sincere, not pitying. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Humans, she murmured softly, are very direct. Only when it matters, Rowan replied with a brief smile. That was the first moment Sarilith felt a tiny shift inside her chest, a quiet warmth she couldn't name. Over the next days, their partnership grew more natural. Rowan learned Astalian customs quickly. He learned how to greet nobles properly, how to speak with the right tone, and how to understand their political structure. Sarilith noticed how hard he worked, how determined he was to respect her people, even when some of them whispered doubts about him. Some advisors questioned Rowan privately. Others questioned Sarilith. One senator said to her, Princess, a human is too unpredictable, too emotional. Can such a person be a royal partner? Sarilith answered calmly, Unpredictable does not mean unworthy, and emotions do not make someone weak. She surprised herself with the confidence in her voice. She realized that after spending time with Rowan, something in her perspective had changed. She began to believe she deserved to be heard, not just tolerated. Meanwhile, Rowan faced his own challenges. The nobles watched his every move. They judged the way he stood, the way he spoke, the way he laughed. But Rowan didn't try to become someone else to please them. He remained himself, respectful, honest, and steady. Slowly, some nobles softened. They saw he cared more about the alliance than about his own comfort. One evening, after a meeting ended later than expected, Rowan found himself alone in the grand hall. The tall ceilings echoed with soft music from hidden speakers. The floors glowed beneath his feet. He was tired, but in his mind replayed every conversation he had shared with Sarilith. He realized something. He liked her, not just as a political partner or a symbol of the alliance. He liked her as a person, her quiet strength, her intelligence, her kindness, her resilience. She deserved someone who valued her for who she was, not what tradition wanted her to be. And Rowan wondered if he could be that person. He didn't have time to think further, because Sarilith entered the hall. She approached him with gentle steps, her face uncertain. Rowan, she said softly, may I speak with you? Of course. She paused, trying to find the right words. I want to thank you. Since you arrived, I feel something changing around me. People are listening more. They are questioning their old beliefs. And you speak to me like I matter. I am not used to that. I wanted you to know. It means more than I can say. Rowan's voice was quiet but firm. Sarilith, you do matter. You always did. Your people just forgot to see it. Her eyes shimmered slightly in the soft light. Not tears, but emotion she rarely allowed anyone to witness. You remind me that hope still exists, she whispered. Rowan stepped closer, not too close, just enough to show he was present. And you remind me that peace is worth fighting for. Something warm passed between them, then, not romantic, not forced, but the beginning of trust. a bond forming in a place where neither expected to find it. Their marriage was still only a plan, a political agreement. But as the days went on, something deeper began to take root, like the garden trees around them. And while the Empire watched with curiosity and uncertainty, one thing became clear. Rowan and Sarilith were not just forming an alliance. They were forming a connection strong enough to reshape the future of two civilizations, though neither of them fully understood it yet. The true story of their partnership was only just beginning. The calm days in the Estelian Palace did not last long. Rumors spread across the Empire like cold wind. The Voidborn Dominion had begun its advance again. Outposts near the border reported missing ships, destroyed stations, and sudden disappearances. The council meetings grew longer and more tense. Advisors spoke faster. Nobles whispered louder, and soldiers trained without rest. It felt as if the whole empire was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible. Rowan Hale sensed the change immediately. He had lived most of his life on battlefields, and he recognized the signs of conflict: tightened security, hurried officers, and fear hidden behind polite speeches. Even though he was a guest, almost a future prince consort, he was still a soldier first. His instincts warned him that something was coming, something big. Princess Sarilith also felt the atmosphere shift. She had always tried to remain calm, but the tension in the palace reminded her too much of past crises. She feared not only for her empire, but also for the humans who had agreed to the alliance. If the Voidborn Dominion attacked, both sides would be drawn into war. One evening, as she reviewed reports in her office, Rowan entered quietly. He had been meeting with the Estelian military leaders, studying their strategies and offering human perspective. But he came to her now not as a strategist, but as someone who could sense her worry. "You look tired," Rowan said gently. Sarilith lowered her hands from the glowing screen. "There is much to think about. So many colonies are at risk." Rowan nodded. "I've seen the reports. The Voidborn Dominion moves fast. Too fast. Faster than our defenses can adjust," she admitted. "If they break through the outer ring, they could reach the capital in days." She looked directly at Rowan then, her eyes filled with quiet fear. "I do not want my people to suffer, and I do not want your people dragged into destruction because of us." Rowan stepped closer, his voice steady. "Sarilith, we made an alliance. Humans don't back away when their allies are in danger. We stand together." Her breath shook slightly, but she nodded. His words always had a grounding effect. They felt real, not like diplomatic comfort. The next day, the Emperor called for a full strategy council. The hall filled with military officers, senators, advisors, and representatives from the Terran Federation. Rowan sat beside Sarilith, noticing how some nobles still looked surprised by their closeness. But none of them objected. There were more urgent threats to worry about. A high-ranking general activated a large holographic map. Red marks spread across the galaxy like spilled ink. "Our outer stations have fallen," the general said. "The Voidborn Dominion has deployed swarm fleets, unlike anything we have seen. Their technology has advanced. Their strategies have changed. They avoid our traps, break our defenses, and vanish before we can counterattack." Another officer added, "We believe they have learned from past battles. They are adapting." The Emperor's voice was heavy. "If they reach our core worlds, millions will die." Rowan studied the map for a long moment. His eyes narrowed. Their movements look strange. They're not spreading out to conquer territory. They're moving in a pattern, like they're searching for something. The generals exchanged puzzled looks. Searching? For what? Rowan pointed at a cluster of planets. "This formation here, it isn't random. On the human front, enemy fleets use this exact pattern when they're trying to locate a specific target. not just destroy everything. Sarilith leaned forward. What kind of target? Rowan hesitated. Something valuable, something ancient, or something powerful. Her eyes widened. Ancient. She suddenly rose from her seat. There is something. But it was forgotten. Long ago. The hall fell silent as she spoke. In our oldest archives, before written history, there were records of a protective system, a shield that could cover entire star sectors, but it required knowledge lost over time. Most believed it was a myth. Rowan looked at her with intensity. If the Voidborn Dominion knows it isn't a myth, they might be looking for it. An advisor shook his head. We cannot rely on ancient stories. Sarilith interrupted, her voice firm. They are not stories. I have studied the old scripts. I have read things most of you never cared to examine. For the first time in a long time, the nobles looked at her with real attention, not pity, not judgment, but respect. The Emperor turned to her. Sarilith, do you believe you can find the missing knowledge? I do, she answered. But I will need unrestricted access to the deep archives. You shall have it, he declared instantly. Rowan felt a quiet pride for her, rising inside him. She was stepping into the role she always deserved, not because of tradition, but because of her mind. Over the next days, Sarilith buried herself in the oldest chambers of the palace. Rowan visited often, bringing her food, checking on her safety, and helping her search through ancient symbols and records. The archives were cold and dim, filled with dusty relics and forgotten tablets. Some of the texts were written in languages older than the Empire itself. Sarilith studied each one with intense focus. Rowan admired her determination. She hardly slept, drinking cup after cup of warm herbal tea to stay awake. Sometimes he helped her organize information, even though he understood only a small part of it. But he stayed anyway, because she needed someone beside her. Finally, after nearly a week of searching, Sarilith found something, a fragment of an old star chart and a description of a device known as the Celestial Barrier. Her voice trembled as she read. This can shield entire fleets. It could save us. Rowan looked over her shoulder. Can you activate it? She took a slow breath. Only if we reach the location before the Voidborn Dominion does. If they get there first, they might destroy it, or use it. That night, the Emperor approved a joint expedition. Astellian ships and human ships would travel together, with Sarilith and Rowan leading the mission. Some nobles objected, saying it was too risky for a princess to go, but she silenced them with a single statement. If the Empire falls, what use is safety? Rowan stood beside her as she prepared for departure. He adjusted the collar of his uniform and looked at her seriously. Sarilith, I will protect you, no matter what we face. She met his eyes, feeling an emotion she couldn't name. I know, she whispered. And I trust you. As their ship lifted into the sky, engines glowing like twin suns, the fate of two empires rested not on bloodlines or ancient traditions, but on the courage of a human soldier and an alien princess who refused to give up. The real battle was coming, and neither of them knew what waited in the dark. But they would face it together. The joint fleet of humans and Astellians moved through space in perfect silence. Millions of stars stretched around them, glowing like distant lanterns in the darkness. Rowan Hale stood on the main deck of the lead ship, studying the star chart Sarilith discovered in the ancient archives. The coordinates were clear, but what waited at the end of the journey was still unknown. Princess Sarilith stood beside him. Her eyes focused on the shimmering screen. She looked calm on the outside, but inside, she felt a storm of thoughts. If the celestial barrier existed, and if they could activate it, they could save millions. If not, the Voidborn Dominion would break through their defenses, and the Empire would fall. Their fleet jumped through hyperspace, closer and closer to the hidden location. When they finally exited the jump, Rowan's breath caught. Before them floated a giant structure unlike anything either of them had ever seen. It was a colossal ring of ancient technology, as large as a small moon. It shimmered faintly with blue light, as if it had been sleeping for thousands of years. Broken pieces of metal drifted nearby, but the core structure remained intact. Sarilith stepped closer to the viewing window. "This is it," she whispered. "The celestial barrier." Rowan stared at it with awe. "Your ancestors built this." "Long before our recorded history," she replied. "Before traditions, before any of the rules that hold our society now." Their moment of wonder was cut short when alarms blared across the ship. Officers scrambled to their stations as the black shapes of void-born ships emerged from behind a dead moon. Their fleets appeared like a cloud of shadows, moving swiftly and silently. "They found us," Rowan said sharply. Sarilith turned toward him, her voice steady but firm. "Then, we must activate the barrier before they destroy it." Human and Estelian ships formed a defensive circle around the ancient ring. Lasers cut through the dark, shields flared, and engines roared. The Voidborn Dominion attacked without hesitation, firing deadly beams that shook the ships like storms hitting fragile glass. Rowan issued orders with practiced speed. "Human squadron, flank left. Estelian cruisers, support the center. Keep them away from the ring. Hold. Quat." Sarilith worked beside him, communicating with the research teams who were scanning the structure for an activation point. "The key is inside," she said. "There's a control chamber at the center of the ring." Rowan looked at her. "We're going in." The Emperor's voice crackled through the comms. "Princess, it is too dangerous. Stay with the fleet." But Sarilith responded firmly. "Father, you trusted me to find the answer. Now let me finish what I began." Rowan and Sarilith boarded a small shuttle with a team of human and Estelian specialists. As they flew toward the ancient ring, enemy fire streaked past them, lighting the darkness with deadly brightness. Rowan maneuvered around explosions, guiding the shuttle through narrow paths between debris. When they entered the ring's interior, they found a huge chamber filled with floating crystals and glowing symbols. The technology was old, but beautiful, untouched by time. The air hummed with quiet energy. Sarilith stepped forward carefully, her eyes scanning the ancient script. She moved with purpose, her fingers brushing over symbols as she whispered translations. Rowan stayed beside her, alert for any threat. One of the specialists pointed at a large orb floating in the center. "Princess, this must be the core." Sarilith nodded. "Yes, but it needs activation through the old language. I must speak it properly." Rowan watched as she began to chant softly in an ancient tongue. Her voice echoed in the chamber, deep and rhythmic. The symbols around them lit up one by one, forming patterns that glowed brighter with each word. Outside, the battle intensified. Human and Estelian ships fought together with desperate strength. The Voidborn vessels tried to break through, firing relentlessly at the ring. But the joint fleet held the line. Inside the chamber, the lights grew stronger. The orb pulsed like a beating heart. Rowan heard the comms officer's panicked voice in his earpiece. "Captain, they are breaking the left flank! We cannot hold much longer!" Rowan clenched his jaw. "Activate it, Sarilith. Do whatever you need to do." She continued chanting, her voice firm despite the urgency. The ancient symbols lifted into the air, swirling around her in spiraling patterns. The core began to spin, releasing waves of soft blue energy. Then, with a deep hum that shook the entire ring, the celestial barrier activated. A massive wave of light burst from the structure, spreading outward across space like a rising sun. It expanded with incredible speed, passing through ships, stars, and darkness. The Voidborn fleet was caught in the wave. Their weapons stopped firing. Their engines shut down. Their ships became frozen in place, trapped within a field of shimmering energy. The human and Estelian ships were unaffected. Instead, the barrier shielded them, surrounding the entire fleet with protective light. Rowan stared in amazement. It worked. Serelith lowered her hands. Her breathing was heavy, but her eyes shone with relief. We did it. The communication screens lit up with messages of astonishment and celebration. The Emperor's voice came through, filled with emotion. My daughter, you have saved us. Serelith's eyes softened, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly seen by her people. As the fleet escorted the ring back to safe territory, Estelians across the Empire celebrated Princess Serelith as a hero. Noble families, who once whispered pity, now bowed with respect. Humans across the Terran Federation praised Rowan for his leadership and courage. The alliance became stronger than ever, no longer based on desperation, but on shared victory. The official marriage ceremony took place soon after their return. It was simple but beautiful. Estelian and human traditions mixed together, forming something new and meaningful. Rowan stood beside Serelith, not as a political partner forced into a role, but as someone who chose her fully and proudly. Serelith accepted him not because duty required it, but because she trusted him with her heart and her future. The galaxy watched as an infertile alien princess, once ignored, once dismissed, became a symbol of unity, wisdom, and strength. And beside her stood a human soldier whose courage changed the fate of two civilizations. Their story was not about perfection or bloodlines. It was about two people who met in a moment of fear and uncertainty and turned it into hope. In the years that followed, human and Estelian worlds lived in harmony. Joint academies were built, scientific teams worked together, and fleets trained side by side. And whenever history books spoke of this alliance, they always began with the same sentence. In the era when no one would marry the infertile alien princess, a human soldier did, and together, they saved the stars.